In our village of Olkovka, time seemed to freeze in the winter of 1943. Even decades later, after the scorched huts were replaced by brick houses and the shell craters were swallowed by thick grass, the town's memory remained as sharp and jagged as rusted barbed wire dot. My name is Maria Stepanovna. During that winter, when the Germans arrived, I was 12 years old. I remember the fear. It smelled of damp snow and scorched skin. But more than anything, I remember Polina. Polina lived in the last house by the edge of the forest. She was breathtakingly beautiful tall, with a golden braid and eyes the color of cold glacial ice. Before the war, she was expected to marry the most eligible bachelor in the village. When the enemy arrived, everything changed. While other women hid their faces in shawls and grew gaunt from hunger, Polina flourished. She put on her finest dresses, began wearing lipstick, and most horrifyingly, she opened her doors to the officers of the WEHRMACHT. We children saw the well-groomed horses hitched to her porch. We heard the laughter and the sounds of a harmonica drifting from her windows. We watched as the village commandant, Captain Schwartz, brought her parcels of white bread and real chocolate, while our mothers boiled soup from nettles and leather belts. Polina drank French wine. Nazi plaything, the women would spit as she passed. A Judas in a skirt, the old men whispered. Her father, a veteran of the First World War, cursed her and moved into the shed. He wouldn't take a single crumb of bread from her, even when his cough turned bloody. Polina merely shrugged and continued to smile at the enemy. The war ended. The Germans were driven out, and Schwartz shot himself in a ravine. Polina wasn't executed. There was no direct evidence that she had handed over partisans to the enemy. But her life became a fate worse than death. No one would hire her. The local shop refused to sell her bread. Every spring, neighborhood boys would shatter her windows. She lived like a ghost in her decaying house. Polina aged prematurely. Her golden braid turned silver, and the light in her eyes went out. But she never offered an excuse. Not once. She just quietly boarded up her broken windows and kept living. I grew up, moved to the city, became a doctor, and got married. But every time I returned to Olkovka, I saw that stooped figure by the fence. Polina had become part of the landscape, a living monument to betrayal. Why don't you leave? I asked her once, when I was in my 40s, catching her at the well. Everyone else had stepped back, refusing to stand near her. She looked at me with those icy eyes, and for a fleeting second, a flash of such unbearable pain ignited in them that I felt a chill. My land is here, Maria. My atonement is here, she replied softly, before trudging away, dragging a heavy bucket behind her. Polina died in late November. A hard frost hit during the night, and they didn't find her for 2 days. She was sitting in a chair by the window, staring at the road where the tanks had once rumbled away. The village breathed a sigh of relief. No one wanted to attend the funeral. The local official even grumbled, "We'll bury her outside the fence, like a suicide or a witch. She doesn't deserve to lie next to decent people." I don't know what came over me, but I went into her house. Perhaps it was a doctor's professional curiosity, or maybe a strange premonition. The house smelled of dust, dried herbs, and cleanliness. There was none of the luxury people had gossiped about years ago. Just an old bed and empty shelves. Under the dining table, I noticed an odd gap in the floorboards. The rug had been shifted. I called Ivan and a couple of other men, and we pried up the heavy wood. We expected to find hidden German gold or looted treasures, but what we found in that basement made us freeze in our tracks. The basement was divided into 2 sections. The first was an ordinary pantry, but behind a false wall, disguised by shelving units, lay a tiny hidden room. There was a narrow cot, a kerosene lamp, and a pile of yellowed notebooks. The walls of the room were scratched with names. Hundreds of names. Ivan picked up the top notebook. His hands began to shake. These are lists, he whispered. Lists of the people who were supposed to be deported to Germany in 42. I opened another notebook. It was a diary. Every entry began with a date and the name of a German officer. December 12th, 1942. Schwartz was drunk today. He told me that at dawn tomorrow, they are going to burn the Svetli settlement. I managed to pass a note through the woodsman. The people escaped into the forest. Schwartz beat me because I wasn't cheerful enough. I smiled anyway. I have to endure. March 4th, 1943. Today I traded my gold. Earrings, my mother's gift for an ampule of penicillin from the staff doctor. Passed it to the partisans for their wounded commander. In the village, they say I'm stealing medicine for my German lovers. Let them talk. May 18th, 1943. Kolya, my Kolya. He saw me on the porch with the major today. He spat in my face. Dear God, give me the strength not to scream that this major will cancel the execution of Kolya's brothers tomorrow because I agreed to go to the city with him. My Kolya hates me, and that is right. It's easier to survive that way. In the far corner of the cellar, we found a small box. Inside were baby clothes, tiny bonnets, booties, and a stack of letters that had never been sent. It turned out that in this very basement, Polina had hidden Jewish children. On the very nights when music blared upstairs and the Germans laughed, frightened toddlers sat in the dark beneath their boots, holding their breath. She fed them the very white bread and chocolate her admirers brought her. She led them through the woods to the partisans, risking her life every single second. Schwartz hadn't been her lover. He had been her hostage. She knew about his family back in Dresden. She knew about the secret letters he wrote that bypassed censorship. She blackmailed him, flattered him, and played on his weaknesses, bartering for the lives of her fellow villagers. The final entry in the diary was made on the day. The village was liberated. Our boys are here. I see the tanks. I want to run out to them, to hug a soldier in his dusty tunic. But I can't. To them, I am forever that woman. Schwartz shot himself. Now there is no one to confirm I was a scout, but the children are alive. The settlement wasn't burned. This is my victory. Thank you, Lord, for the silence. Ivan stumbled out of the basement. He carried the notebooks outside, where a crowd had already gathered. The people were waiting to see the looted goods. He didn't explain a thing. He simply began to read aloud. At first, the crowd was rowdy. Then they fell silent. A silence so heavy you could hear the snow falling on the dry leaves. When he reached the part where Polina described trading, her honor for the lives of 30 teenagers who were already being marched to the trains, including Ivan's own father, one of the old women, Aunt Daria, let out a gasp and collapsed to the ground. She was the one who had cursed Polina the loudest, and then something happened that Olkovka had never seen before. Ivan was the first to drop to his knees, right into the mud and the wet snow in front of that dilapidated porch. The other men followed, removing their caps. The women, covering their faces with their shawls, sobbed uncontrollably. The entire village stood on its knees before the house of the woman they had been killing with their contempt for 40 years. They were begging forgiveness from the one who had silently carried their cross on her frail shoulders, from the one who allowed her name to be dragged through the dirt so that their names could remain etched in the book of the living, rather than on headstones. The entire region came for Polina's funeral. The casket was carried by hand through the whole village to the most honorable plot in the cemetery, right next to the memorial for the fallen liberators. On her grave, they didn't write traitor. Instead, there stands a simple granite monument that reads, Polina Mikhailovna Berestova, an angel we failed to recognize. Every year on the 9th of May, the people don't go to the eternal flame first. They go to her. And every time there are fresh flowers and a small piece of white bread, a sign that we remember, a sign that the truth, even if you bury it in a basement for decades, always rises to make us human again. I sit by her grave and I wonder, could I have done it? Could I have lived a life knowing that everyone I loved hated me just so they could keep breathing? I don't have an answer, but I know one thing. As long as Olkovka stands, Polina's name will be spoken not as a curse, but as a quiet, bitter prayer for human mercy.